I am Paola Mencarelli. I am from Tuscany and was born in the Campagna Sinesi. I relocated to Florence for my studies. I studied French literature. I've always been passionate about event organization and completed an event management training course. Still, my true passion has always been with food and hospitality. I moved to Rome to complete my master's degree in journalism, specializing in gastronomy, and then worked for Il Gambero Rosso. From there, I continued with my passion for restaurants and food, but slowly I was drawn into the world of cocktails. From there, I began writing for the bar in Il Gambero Rosso and started frequenting the bars in hotels. I've always written for the food guide in Il Gambero Rosso, and with the transfer to the bar, I became closer to hotel bars. This is where the idea came from to bring the first cocktail week to Italy, Florence Cocktail Week. We first researched the world's most important cocktail week events, visiting London Cocktail Week and then visiting Paris during their cocktail week. We created our first Italian cocktail week in Florence, using these as inspiration. After 3 years, I moved to Venice, which started Venice Cocktail Week. We are very fortunate that Italy is very rich in culture, especially in cities like Florence and Venice. This is the main point of difference for this event in Italy. In other countries, there is a greater focus on the business side of things. In Florence and Venice, our approach is different because we focus on the cultural elements and integrate these into our events. This has set us apart from other events around the world. When you talk about numbers, we are smaller than England and America, and as a population, we consume less drink in Italy. But our success comes from our points of difference, our culture, our history, our art are very, very important. Just think, in Florence, 100 years ago, the Negroni was born, one of the most famous cocktails. From this point of view, we are very fortunate. Our cocktail week is designed for the general public, people who are passionate about cocktails. We love it when people arrive with little understanding of the cocktail scene in Italy, but come to our events and get to know the world of mixologists. We also see many professionals who join and sit at the bar rubbing shoulders with other passionate people, be they fellow bartenders or people from the general public. In 2016, when we created our first cocktail week in Florence, there was only one event, a single masterclass, because mixology wasn't very established around 10 years ago in Italy. There weren't so many contacts in the world of bartending, but there are now. In the years that followed, the companies themselves became more interested in organizing events during the week, and this has allowed us to expand the calendar. Our focus became primarily engaging the businesses, so even though in the beginning I was inviting guest bartenders from around the world, now it's the companies that converge, and the calendar is much richer with events. Basically, we organize the major cultural events, for example, tours of historical cafes, gardens, tours, particularly cultural, and the history of the city, and presentations of books, particularly the non-branded events by sponsors. For the other events, it is necessary to have a product to activate, whether in the masterclasses or the events in the evenings. This is where the companies that have an interest think about what they want to achieve through the event, and we are there to support them. I thought my event would only ever be based in Florence, But 3 years ago, I was contacted by a high-end hotel in Venice. There was someone who worked there and also in a hotel in Florence, who had also been to our cocktail week there. They asked me if I would be interested in doing the same in Venice. I had doubts and wasn't sure, as Venice is a complicated city and a difficult one to live in. But mixology has a significant history in Venice. It is not a contemporary city regarding mixology. But when I arrived in Venice, I fell totally in love with the city because it's a beautiful place to live. As a city, it is so crucial to art, history, and culture. So it deserved a cocktail week. And for the world of mixology, it could mean progress. The majority of difficulties at first was to get the company's involvement. To get them to believe in our event when we started the first years were very difficult. It was an investment in energy, money, and time. I had the fortune to meet with the young people who initiated the sales and began collaborating in our cocktail week. There are a lot of passionate people involved in making all of this happen. And thanks to their collaboration during the cocktail week, they also were able to grow professionally. Their skills have helped us grow with social media, print, graphics, and photography, which are all necessary to get the word out about an event like Cocktail Week. After a year, the company started believing in the event, and it became more authoritative, and the difficulties really aren't there anymore due to the company's involvement. Now, the event has become much more popular in Italy and across the world. Internally, the difficulties are in getting the bartenders to understand what we are trying to do for them, giving them the visibility in their sector, their professionalism, and making sure that everything is on point for them. We are communicating very much on the image, the profession of the bartender, developing their profile, and this, we believe, helps to grow mixology in the cities. In Florence, it worked, and in Venice, it's starting to work. For now, it seems a bit more difficult with the bartenders than the companies, unlike in the beginning. In this third edition of Cocktail Week in Venice, we have organized another new initiative. It's called Dining with the Spirits. We have tried to combine the restaurant sector, which is generally separate from the world of bars. So we have looked to bring both together and have asked our chefs to utilize spirits as a key ingredient in their dishes. This initiative was designed to pair the world of restaurants and mixology because they are so linked. Help for us came from the local council in Venice, which has sustained us from the very beginning. In particular, La Vella, an agency that organizes the big, well-known Venetian events like the film festival, the Biennale, and the Carnevale. So having their help was integral in growing this event quickly, unlike Florence, which came from our own sort of initiatives. On the other side, the participation of the cocktail bar at the Cocktail Week is achieved by our team highlighting bars with merit. For the selection of mixed cocktails during the week, we ask them to present a mixed cocktail based on a theme. The first is a signature cocktail that best represents them and also the other cocktails from the city. For example, in Venice at midday, it is a great tradition and culture to have an aperitivo before lunch. This is different than what happens in Florence. In Florence, this aperitivo happens before dinner. Another important area we are dedicated to achieving things through our cocktail week is giving smaller companies better outcomes and greater exposure in the region.
Players e alle grandi aziende che solitamente partecipano agli eventi. Da alcuni anni abbiamo iniziato anche a fare alcune collaborazioni con le cocktail internazionali, quindi con Tel Aviv Cocktail Week.
We are also starting an initiative for the Cocktail Week where we're collaborating with other cities like Tel Aviv and Armenia internationally. In Italy, our collaboration with Florence was the first. Now we have Trieste and Torino. For us, it was essential to collaborate with the Athens Bar Show. There, we created the very first global masterclass on how to organize a cocktail week. Now, plans for the future. After the second edition of Venice Cocktail Week, we organized the first cocktail week in the mountains of the Dolomites. It was a cocktail weekend where they were skiing with a martini in hand, with the winner finishing the slope with as much of the martini left in the glass as possible. It was very, very enjoyable. We will probably do something in the mountains in the coming years, but clearly our focus right now is on Florence and Venice. In Florence, we have organized cocktail parties only for one night, although our event is for a week. And next year, we will propose one for the Amalfi Coast Cocktail Week.